For more on this, I'm joined by Shuki Friedman, Director General of the JPPI Jewish People Policy Institute. Absolutely great to have you on the show, Shuki. Thank you so much for joining us. Just before we get into the Greta Thunberg story, there are some figures coming out today by officials in Gaza. They say 36 people were killed today near aid distribution centers. Obviously, we cannot verify these figures because no international journalists are allowed into the Gaza Strip. Overall, they say around 200 people have been injured. Is Israel using aid centers as death traps for starving civilians in Gaza, as some people are suggesting?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. I think it's the opposite. What happened today, I really don't know, because there is no reliable information. And based on the previous event about 2 weeks ago, where Hamas reported 25 or 30 being killed, and being figured out that no one had been killed. So let's assume that it's another lie of Hamas. But the more important thing is that what happened in Gaza today is Hamas took in hostages 55 Israelis are still there, 20 are alive, but also 2 million citizens of Gaza, which he's using as hostages to remain in power. And what we see in these distribution centers is that Israel is trying, through cooperation with international company or income company, to feed the population, support them, and make them more, at least, not starving, and get some necessity and food. And Hamas is preventing them to get there, and even shooting them through their way to the distribution centers. So if someone put traps in these centers, it's Hamas, not Israel.
Thank you for clarifying that. And as I do know, the figures are extremely difficult and hard to be accurate because no independent journalists are allowed into Gaza under the rules of Israel. But let's talk about Greta Thunberg. She's arrived in France following her deportation. She says Israel did commit an illegal act by kidnapping them on international waters and against our will. Do you agree with her personal account of what happened?
I think this event is quite marginal because it's a way of demonstrating against the situation in Gaza. It's legitimate to demonstrate, legitimate to blockade the water of Gaza, and Israel is doing it for 2 decades, and actually preventing this flotilla to get into Gaza. But I think what's more important is how to end this catastrophe in Gaza, and it's really heartbreaking to see the suffer of the population over there. And I think Israel side is really willing to end this war by releasing the hostages and also de-weaponize Hamas. And if Hamas is only agree to these 2 conditions and step down and let international power to take over, Gaza will thrive. Gaza will be restructured and renovate, and I think the future of the Gazan will be much more better. So if Greta Thunberg and her friends care about the Gazans, they should address Hamas and demand Hamas to simply let the Gazan live and leave them alone by not treating them with guns and bringing foreign powers to take over and to bring more prosperity and better future for all Gazans and Israelis.
Shuki, I just want to move on to another story. Yesterday, Netanyahu was in court again, being cross-examined in his corruption trial for the 3rd time. A protester called him a loser. Could this trial tear down the Prime Minister?
This trial is going for more than 3 years. It's, I think, will take more than a year to conclude. There are so many witnesses down the road, and maybe possibility of appealing. I think the more near catastrophe or threat on Netanyahu government is the crisis regarding the drafting of the ultra-Orthodox to the army. And if we look into the political situation, we see that even though the government is quite stable, the ultra-Orthodox is threatening in collapsing the government, and this might bring the end of this current Netanyahu government. The court will take longer than this crisis, I think.
And Shuki, just before I let you go, briefly, Britain and other allies have sanctioned Israeli far-right ministers over their repeated incitements of violence against Palestinian communities. Is this a major step from Israeli allies against Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and the government, really?
You know, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich are extreme right-wing ministers in the Israeli government. They've been elected legitimately by the Israeli people. I personally don't support their policies and don't support their declarations, but I think that through a time of war, it's better that like-minded states or close friends of Israel will prevent of these steps of sanctioning Israeli ministers and sanctioning this government, and to try to negotiate and have a conversation with the government to eliminate these kind of policies and eliminate threat toward the Palestinians in the West Bank, because I think in Israeli perspective and interest, there is both two interests. One is to not lose its friends around the world, and more important, the closest friends like Canada and the UK, but also to keep the West Bank calm down and more frequent and contained. So I think the better path for both sides is not sanctioning this minister, but trying to negotiate and have a conversation between friends to mitigate tensions and to contain violence from both sides.
Shuki Friedman, Director General of the JPPI, Jewish People Policy Institute. It was great to have your thoughts on the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.